笑，滔滔烈共潮，四海英雄聚今朝，苍天笑，拔剑斩红刀，浪沙淘尽怒白霄。整整70年，他把中华人民主义，还让这片土地变得满目疮痍。全世界投毒制造各种生化武器，我去，他答应了人类命运共同体。3代爆料，携手占有新天道，振兴我中华同胞，兴起了灭共浪潮。壮志冲云霄，看那国旗飘飘，别鸟铁岭河上，神州阳光普照。江山笑，血雨遥，谁负谁生出一份笑，风萧萧，神霄显如潮，盘古开天风潮。3年多的爆料，就是黑压死磕，中方实锤，每天都有一点也不嫌多。以美灭共，以共灭国，还得靠我们战友们行动。天佑我中华儿女，共建联邦新中国。黑夜显祖国，照亮东方的天。戳破光辉的火焰，我准备了3世毒液，越过了死亡幽谷，踏上了灭共之路。纵有太多雄剑，我中华只能虚度。听风笑，收归正道，一周他老自逍遥。苍生笑，热血万丈高，仰天长啸志英豪。战友们豪气穿云霄，寒武相聚在今朝。我定报 The war is the same for the world. Safety behind the people's side. We are running out of time. Take down action. Take down the CCP. Take down action. Take down the CCP. La 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 la
Enjoy the first touch with sunshine, meditating every breath. Different moods fill up my mind, reach up into my life, feeling smooth. Enjoy the first touch with sunshine, meditating every breath. Different moods fill up my mind, reach up in I just down to the south, everything's going on. New spot, real hot game. Stop, thinks not. What's the trend to the next? Hopping on a new life. Lately, I've been really out of my mind. People only could talk. I don't wanna waste my time living up off the way I'm sad, cause the feeling aren't real. I ain't gonna talk about pills. Falling boys up on a hill, cause I ain't never gonna fold. Played away illusion last night. Legendary rocks on the road.
Working on the road.
Woo! For a long time. Ain't no way to keep it on the low. Enjoy the first stretch for sunshine, meditating every breath. Different moods fill up my mind. Switch up into my life, feeling smooth. Use the list on
when the sun goes down, the starlight scene. Have you ever imagined Houston shine like this? Pull up to our Houston List Art Farm, come to join it. Give yourself an arm, find yourself here, create yourself a place. Let's take up, let's start rocket to the space. Hong Kong woke me up from my long last dream. Feel like I'm used to trapping into the realest meme. We'll live it in the same road, hitting different scene. Now we're looking for a solid team. We're looking for a solid team.
On the stage, give yourself a shit. You don't wanna miss it. Use the list on the stage, give yourself a shit. You don't wanna miss it. I'm never feeling so good. You don't wanna miss it. Use the list on the stage. You don't wanna miss it. I never feeling so good. You don't wanna miss it. Use the list on the stage. Give yourself a shake. You don't wanna miss it. I'm never feeling so good. Give yourself a shake. You don't wanna miss it. Use the list on the stage. Give yourself a shake. You don't wanna miss it. I'm never feeling so good.
Good evening, Fringers. It is Friday, May 14th, 2021. Thank you for joining us and welcome to episode 36 of The Fringe. I'm your host, David Vincent Bob. The Fringe is simultaneously broadcast every week in English and in Chinese on gtv.org at MOS Talk. That's every Tuesday and Friday night from 7 to 8 p.m. We are honored to have you here with us this evening, and we appreciate your patronage. Please, please, please spread the word about our show to all of your friends and all of your family, and subscribe and follow us on gtv.org at MOS Talk. Well, it's Friday night, Fringers, and we have a special guest for you tonight. This evening, my co-host tonight is someone who is no stranger at all to the Fringe family. Unfortunately, Ede can't be with us, but this gentleman can, and he's been a guest before, as well as being a key member of the translation team here on the Fringe and for the entire MOS. Please join us in welcoming Forrest to the show this evening. Forrest, thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to thank all the GTV and the Fringer viewers for your support. Second, I would like to thank you, David, and your team for the hard work to make this a great show. I'm very glad to come back to the show, and especially as a host. I'm a little bit nervous now. And last, I would like to thank all the translation team for their effort. Without them, it is impossible for our Chinese viewers to see this program. Okay, David.
Thank you so much, Forrest. I'm nervous too. I'm always nervous. We'll get through it. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Again, it's great to have you here here with us tonight, and thank you for filling in for Ada. We really appreciate it. Now let's get on to the show. We have a lot to talk about tonight. I like how you plugged the translation team there. That's great. Yeah, they do a fantastic job. We do have a wonderful team here, but we do have to get on to our breaking news. We have a lot to talk about tonight. And in our first report from Al Jazeera, we are going to talk about India and COVID again. They've seen 362,727 new COVID cases as the virus ravages the rural areas. Could we please play that video now, Chris?
Umar Farouk sits on his mother's grave as it's being prepared. He's not yet ready to say goodbye. His story of mourning is one of thousands around the country every day. As India's streets empty because of localized lockdowns, burial grounds and crematoriums continue to work day and night. And in India's poorest states, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, 100 bodies of suspected COVID-19 victims have been found floating in the Ganges River.
Our officials are at the scene and investigating. We are trying to find out where did these dead bodies come from, how did they get here, and their numbers.
With crematoriums around the country struggling to deal with a huge increase in bodies, residents of Ghazipur in Uttar Pradesh say they informed the local administration about a shortage of wood for cremations.
We told the administration that the dead are being thrown in the water because of a shortage of wood. Bodies from around 12 or 13 villages have been thrown in the water.
Bihar's government denies reports of wood shortages. It says it's carrying out post-mortems on the bodies to determine the causes of death. Elsewhere in India, patients are continuing to die because of oxygen shortages. 26 in the southern state of Goa.
Yesterday we had a requirement of 1,200 cylinders. We got only 400. There was interrupted oxygen supply from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m, which caused a lot of deaths.
Cases are increasing in southern India, where 18 people also died from oxygen shortages this week in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Despite the number of cases dropping in about half of India's states, including the worst affected regions of Maharashtra and Delhi, 1 in 5 people testing for COVID-19 gets a positive result. And that's because the virus has simply spread to other areas, most notably the 5 states where regional elections were held in April. Elizabeth Puranam, Al Jazeera, New Delhi.
You know, Forrest, it breaks my news, and I know as a translator, you guys have been covering this for us and translating everything we've been talking about with this epidemic and with this tragedy that's happening in India because of COVID. We've been covering it for the past few weeks now, and it feels to me, Forrest, like every time we talk about it, we just keep saying the same things over and over again, and I don't know why, as I'm watching this, the rest of the world isn't contributing and helping India out with at least cylinders of oxygen. There's plenty of nations out there that would be able to help out India with supplies of oxygen. I don't know why that's not happening. Every time I see these news articles pop up and I want to cover them and talk about them, it surprises me that there isn't more help from other nations where this is all concerned. How has this gotten so far out of control? They did mention that the regional elections may be the case, and lack of preparation. And there's two big things right there. People are getting together to do their due diligence and vote for their elected officials, for their official elections. And again, the lack of preparation. And I did read another news story that was talking about after the elections one time, they actually had an open, they had a tournament. I believe it was not rugby, but it was one of their main sports that they play over there. Can't remember the name of it, I'm sorry. But they had, I'm sorry? Yeah, so whatever the sport was, I at this moment, I can't remember it. Wicket, is that what it's called? They had so many people in the stadium, and they think that probably added to it also. So they're averaging about 400,000 infections every day. This is just these are horrible numbers. And India only had enough vaccines for 4% of the entire infections that they had, even with the warnings of mutations. So they were definitely unprepared. And in past episodes, I've talked about how the population is very, very, very upset and disappointed with their leadership. And it could affect this election cycle because he may not be reelected, their president, because he didn't handle this correctly. India has become the epicenter for this virus in just the past month, just in the month of May and at the end of April and this month. And for the last 14 days, they've become the epicenter for the virus. They're throwing, you heard that report, they're throwing bodies in the Ganges River. They said in the beginning of the report, they didn't know why the bodies were getting thrown into the river, but then they figured it out. They're like, oh yeah, it's definitely happening because they're out of wood to cremate the bodies that are dead with, so they're just throwing them in the river. This cannot be good. You're throwing infected bodies into a river, and if it's a water supply, you're talking about reinfecting people that are possibly drinking with that water, bathing with it. I'm not sure what the spread is like after death. I think it's not possible, actually, they say. But who knows with this virus? Who knows what kind of concoction the CCP put into it that they won't tell anyone about, so it does spread in water. Who knows? The oxygen shortage is continuing. And they have the lack of all basic necessities, beds, oxygen again, ventilators. And this is a humanitarian crisis now, and it's at an apocalyptic level, Forrest, and it doesn't seem like it's letting up. The cases are dropping again a little bit. 1 in 5 are positive, if that's a positive note, if there's any, I guess. Something that I did read earlier today, though, Forrest, was another tragedy on top of this tragedy about to hit India, the country of India. On the southern border, there is a massive cyclone building up in the ocean that's about to hit the land, that's about to hit the nation of India on the southern tip where most of these COVID cases are now. So God bless them. I got to throw a prayer out there for the people of India. This is just one massive, could you imagine being in the middle of that situation where you just have hundreds of thousands of people getting infected every day and thousands and thousands and thousands dying every single day. And then on top of that, guess what? You're about to be hit by a cyclone and have a lot of other really massive damage to your nation. This is just an awful time for India, and my heart and prayers do go out. And I read this morning. Actually, it was just a couple hours ago, Forrest. There's unfortunately, they're breaking records that they don't need to be breaking or want to be breaking in India. And it's the COVID stats for India. Amid the worsening health crisis, India has been regularly every day, setting records, daily records of more than 400,000 cases that have also turned into global records. The current world record of 414,188 was set in the country on May 6th, 2021. That was 8 days ago. The record high for daily deaths in the country was 4,205 in one day on May 11th. That was just 3 days ago. India's death toll since the pandemic began is more than 258,000, which is just third, behind Brazil with more than 430,000, and behind us, the US, and we have more than 584,000 deaths. And that's according to Johns Hopkins University. So all in all around, just a tragic situation of apocalyptic measures here in India forest.
Yes, absolutely, David. It's very heartbreaking to see what happening in India. We can only pray for them. I would like to talk about a couple points. The first, I know those image looks very disturbing. It's as you just described, is looking at the end of world, but it's the truth, it's the fact. But where compared to China, from the very beginning, the CCP was trying to cover up the truth of the virus. The first, the surprise, the whistleblowers telling about the infection of the virus. And Dr. Li Wenliang was arrested for so-called spread the rumors. And he also passed away because of the virus. Then we are talking about the real infection number and the real death toll. Even up to today, the death toll is unknown. Nobody believes the number published by CCP is real. The second point is we can see there is no free speech and free press in China. And we can see the CCP, how they treat their own people. The inhuman lockdowns caused a lot of unnecessary infection and deaths. Basically, they treat their people just like the slaves. They don't care about their lives, or to be more accurate, they don't care about how they live. The people can eat poisoned food. They can eat grass for 3 years. They can breathe heavily polluted airs, or simply just die in the hospital without any treatment because they don't have enough money to pay. So the only thing they care is how many labors they have. So 50 years ago, when they felt people were their burden, they would ask them to birth control, right? That's the famous one-child policy in China. But nowadays, there is a paper around on the proposal that couples shall have no fewer than 2 kids in China, just to dealing with Chinese Asian population problem. So this is how CCP treats their citizen. The last and the very important one is from those videos and this news in India, we can see how severe this biologic weapon, this virus can cause. It first damaged the whole economy, and then it can cause the whole health system collapse, which will lead the whole country to a national unrest. So it is pointed out by Dr. Yan, this is unrestricted biological warfare. There is not much time left for us. If we don't find out the truth about the true origin of this virus, it will cause more people's life and more damage to the whole world. David.
Yeah, that's right, Fars. You brought up some really great points there. And something you brought up that was very interesting about China was how they are not being very forward about their numbers, about the number of people that have passed or died from the virus. And we had that problem in the U.S. I don't remember if you remember that during the beginning of this virus and throughout the whole, during the entire process of this thing happening, there was a lot of speculation that there were hospitals in the U.S. also saying that someone who died from cancer, they just kind of attributed as a COVID death. And there's a lot of shady government workings going on behind this too. And it's not just the CCP. We know that this originated in that lab in Wuhan. We have proof of it. It's just a matter of holding them accountable, and everybody's afraid to at this point. But I really think there's a lot more to this, and it's kind of comes down to money. It's the more deaths that they can claim from COVID, the more money they can get from saying that they had a patient that died from COVID. The hospitals get more money, the more deaths they have. So there was a lot of that going on, and that was a great point, Forrest. And it's an interesting thing to note that that's not just happening in China. That was happening in the U.S. also. So it was I think any lockdown is inhumane. I understand what you're saying about how the CCP does it, and it was happening here also. There's a lot of similarities in all countries Especially when you're talking about the economy, which was another great point. All economies were affected all over the world, and that's what the CCP's endgame was. They got what they wanted out of this, and I think India is just like the icing on the cake for them. They see what's happening there and like, wow, we really got something good. That's, I think, really, Forrest, is how the CCP is thinking about all of this. That they have this, tragedy happening in India, and don't be surprised, Forrest, if you see the CCP trying to capitalize on this too, and going to India and saying, hey, I see, we see what's going on here with your country. You got a lot of people dying from this virus, and we can help. We got this Belt and Road Initiative. We can rebuild your infrastructure after this cyclone destroys your nation. We can come in and fix everything up for you. I could see them really, and I know you know about the Belt and Road Initiative,
Absolutely.
Forrest. I could see them. I could see that, because that's what the Chinese do. That's what the CCP does. They come in and they take advantage of countries that are hurting, and India is hurting right now. Don't be surprised, Fringers. People out there, listen, you heard it here first, right on the Fringe. Don't be surprised if you see the CCP step in real soon and try to help out India. I can guarantee you. Well, I'm not going to guarantee you, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. Okay, we got to get moving on here. We got a lot to cover tonight. I'd like to say this quote now from my new favorite Republican Democrat. I'm sick of being used. I'm sorry, Republican. I'm sorry, she's not a Democrat. She's saying, I'm sick of being used by Democrats. A black Republican woman scores a historic win in Virginia. She's the first black Republican there. And let's run that video.
Making history. Our next guest was the first black woman to serve in Virginia's state legislature. Now, she's the first black woman to secure the Republican nomination for lieutenant governor. And Winsome Sears is also a former Marine, and she joins us now. Winsome, thank you so much for being with us. Congratulations on your nomination. Tell us not only what it means to you, but what you think it symbolizes.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on, Will. So I just want to say, to clear it up, once a Marine, always a Marine. And also, I'm actually not the first black woman. I'm the first black Republican woman, but I'm the first Republican to represent in a district that I did, which was 60% black since 1865. So thank you for letting me clear that up. Now, I do want to say that we are all about school choice. We must have parental school choice. I just heard the segment on critical race theory. It's nonsense, and it says that it's a prima facie evidence. So on its face, as soon as we see a white person, well, they are racist, clearly, and so is everybody else in their family. It's going to be detrimental to our schools, and it's not what we want. It's supposedly to help someone who looks like me, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of being used by the Democrats, and so are many people who look like me.
Winston, first of all, thank you for correcting me. I am very well aware that once a Marine, always a Marine. I don't know how former Marine came out of my mouth, so I appreciate you correcting me on that. But I don't know, popular culture, mainstream media would lead us to believe that if you are black and a Republican, you are an aberration. You are somehow outside the norm. But everywhere I look, there are people like you, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, who, of course, is a minority as well. Caitlyn Jenner, a transgender woman, is running as a Republican to replace Gavin Newsom as governor of that state. Why do we assume that if you are a minority, you must be a Democrat?
Well, because, it is evidential that there is some fact to that, but we are moving away from that because we're understanding what we call the okie doke is in play. I don't know if you all remember that Ice Cube had asked for a meeting with Biden, and he said, later, see me later after the election, and he asked for the same meeting with Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, bet, let's meet now. And so you see, we understand what's what, and we are not going to take it anymore. We are moving away. We're moving back, actually, to our roots. I just reminded our Republican Party that the very first Republican convention after the Civil War was held in Virginia in a black church. In a black church. Imagine that. And so we value everything that everybody else values. And in fact, it's not just black people who are coming back to the Republican Party. It is Asians and Latinos. Right. And I'm an immigrant, so I understand that experience as well. We want freedom. We want liberty. We don't want anyone to tell us what to do either.
Really quickly, Winston, I have like 30 seconds left, but you say something interesting. You said you want to make the case to people who are conservative but don't yet realize they are Republican. Tell me how you make that case.
Because, you see, we want, again, school choice. we want to ensure that we're not trapped in schools that are pulling us down. We want to have the ability to move and put our children anywhere we want. We want safe neighborhoods. We do want our two-way gun rights as well. We want everything that everybody else wants, and we don't want to make anybody use us as our pawn. When I go to the polls, I don't want people to assume that I'm a Democrat. We want political power. I have none if no one comes to me and asks me for my vote.
The same thing everyone wants, respect as an individual. Winsome Sears, we wish you the best of luck in your election. Thanks for being with us this morning.
When I first got this, every week, Forrest, I get, well, every show, basically, before every show, the night before every show, I get a list of the topics that I can choose from that are really big news articles that are happening today. Breaking news, basically, call it our breaking news. I saw this one and I was so excited. There's so many ways that this article, this entire subject matter affects me. And there's many ways that it makes me very happy, too. This is special for me, first of all, because I also am a former Marine myself. And I want to correct Winsome Sears now. You can actually say, Forrest, former Marine. You can't say ex-Marine. I'm not sure where that got all convoluted. Will actually said the right thing. Will said former Marine. You can say former Marine. You can never say ex-Marine. Or you can call them a Marine even if they're not still in service. But former is is the formal way to say it. You never say ex-Marine. Anyway, just wanted to correct that. But the thing besides that, having that in common with her, and Semper Fi to her, that means always faithful. That's the Marine Corps motto. Semper Fidelis means always faithful. Is I like the fact that, Forrest, what's happening here is we see a definite change in the Republican Party, and we're seeing it because of what the Democratic Party has been showing people has been completely false. And the Republican Party has been saying it for so long that they've been accused of racism. They are not the racist party. We've seen this divisive left divide this country for so long, and the Republicans just wanted to be heard, but then their voices were shut down on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. President Trump couldn't even say anything because he was a racist. And look, we've been saying it all along, Forrest, and we knew it all along, that the racism is really on the other side. We don't want to see it coming from anybody. But when you're pointing the finger at one party and you're the party that's actually doing it and you're creating this divide, that has to be fixed. And that's the reason why this to me is so very important. Not because of the color of her skin, but because she's making a point that people of color are being misrepresented by the left. And that's so very true. And it's not just people of color that are African American. As she said, there's a lot of Hispanics and a lot of Asians that are catching on to this too. This is a very, very important and groundbreaking and momentous occasion in our history. The Republican Party does need to take over because we were bringing this nation back together. The Democrats did everything they could to say that this nation was getting divided because of this racist president, and nothing could be opposite, could be even more opposite than what they were saying. And they did mention Caitlyn Jenner. It's very important that a transgender person, to me, is running. I don't agree with, I watched the interview with Caitlyn Jenner. I don't agree with everything that she says, but it is, you have to give it to her for at least taking a chance in doing this. I'm not a huge fan. One of my biggest qualms I have right now is the fact that a man can, and there are posers out there, believe me. There are men that all of a sudden at the age of 25 or 30 say, you know what, I am a woman. And then they go compete against women in, track and rugby even. There's an Olympian racing on bikes from Canada that are just absolutely crushing these women's records in these sports. So that's a whole nother topic for another time. I am very happy that a transgender woman is running for office. We'll see what happens. But again, it's the point of it, though, is to say that there are people starting to finally realize, or people that have realized and haven't spoken up yet about it, that the left really, really is the problem. Barack Obama did it for 8 years. He divided this country. They make the black people feel like they can't accomplish anything, so they give them things to say, here, we'll give you this because we know that you can't do this, so we're going to give you this. And they're encouraging these people to just stay below poverty level or at poverty level, and then they give them money and they say, we'll take care of you, and they don't let them advance, and that's the problem. And she's going to expose all that, and that's great. And we do have a lot of others that are coming out of the woodwork now, and this is a very, very important time, again, for all of us, Forrest, to see this happening. There seems to be a shift going on, again, and, you know, and what I'm trying to say here is the liberal ideologies are starting to sway more toward the conservative side. And that's great. They need to become more conservative in their thoughts and the way that they're making decisions based on the people that we elect to go into these offices and make decisions for us. This is our House of Representatives. We voted for these people. We want them to act like, you know, we want them to bring the country together, not to divide it. And I think, you know, this is because Biden and Harris have really opened their eyes, really have opened other people's eyes to the fact that the grass just isn't that greener on the other side. It's all fake. It really is. And Trump was right all along. People are going to have to hate to admit it, but eventually they're going to admit it and they're going to know. And you know, when Trump's administration ended, I even said it at the end of my speech. I said, someday they're going to wake up and they're going to see it. And I think that's starting to happen for us. And that's what's really exciting me. You know, people aren't stupid. They see what the government is doing. And it is all divisiveness by the left and her stepping out and doing this. And we're seeing more and more and more of people of color, people of different ethnicities saying, hey, the left isn't right. They are doing something wrong. And it's no more that the black people are on the left and the white people are on the right. It's bringing people together, and that's what's really important about all this, Forrest.
Yes, I think you bring a couple of very great points. First is the media control, the Twitters and all the Facebooks. They choose all the news and the stories fits their narrative. That's why GTV is so important. Your show is so important because we bring the truth, the real stories, without bias. I think the other thing, I think the people are used as a tool for these politicians to for their political agenda. So the left, just like all the Chinese Communist parties, is promoting hatred and divisiveness, right? That's the method that they use to keep people getting united, to fighting against the tyranny government. Right. So I think when there is a problem, when people hit each other, they always blame, instead of blaming the government or the policy, they will start to blame each other. Right. Like in China, a lot of patients hate their doctor since they believe the high medical costs are doctors' fault. A lot of people hate the real estate developer because they think all those great developers sell the apartment as a ridiculous high price, which they cannot afford. A lot of people even blame themselves for not being successful. But in fact, it is the system's fault. It is the government. As long as the CCP is in power, you have no voice, you have no rights, you have no opportunity. So I would like to see Chinese people are sick of being used and kidnapped by CCP. So we need to take down the CCP to free our people. Thank you, David.
Yeah, that's right, Forrest. And we see America, and you brought up some great analogies there, whether or not you knew it. And that's kind of what's happening in America. And I kind of brought those points up, and you brought into the picture what's happening in China. And there's so many eerie similarities, and it's scary. And we've talked about it in past. That's why I love having my Chinese American co-hosts on here, because they really bring to the table what's happening in China. And you can see, if you listen to them, Fringers, if you really listen to your Chinese neighbor, your brother and sister, we call them brothers and sisters in the whistleblower movement. But if you really listen to them and listen to what they have to say, you can learn something. And the way that this nation is heading is a place that we don't want it to be. And that's a very, very important point that we try to make here, again, on the Fringe every week. And it's a warning to all of you. And if you want anyone better to warn you about it, have someone that knows the inner workings of China and the CCP, that understands how that government works, and understand that what's happening there is being mirrored in the United States at very small levels, sometimes at bigger or even more. Sometimes it even happens on very big levels, like when we see people like Eric Swalwell, in our state Senate, sleeping with a spy from China, Fang. We see things like that. We see the institute, the Confucius Institutes, which are starting to be. It's being discovered that they are actually using CCP propaganda. They're covering as Chinese, trying to teach Chinese to these university students. But everything's starting to, people are not only starting to come out of the woodwork, but people are starting to realize the infiltration of the CCP. And you're going to go one of two ways, Forrest. You're going to go the way of the CCP, or you're going to fight back against it. These people in America, there are people that I feel like almost want this to happen, and it's disgusting and it makes me sick. And every day I see it and hear about it, I want to fight back, and I want to, bring the word to people. And that's why I do what I do here on the Fringe. I just want people to know what's going on, and this is the way that we do it. And I'll do it until people start to realize it, and I think they are. I really do. And and Winsome is just, Miss Sears is an example of that. That we can see that people are starting to understand that the government is the problem. The government, the United States government, as much as I love it, is not doing what it needs to be doing. You shouldn't be, tearing people apart and using this divisiveness to separate us. You should be bringing us together. All right, we got to move on now. And speaking of fixing the Republican Party, the House Republicans, we did report on Liz Cheney in the last episode. She's the third highest position in the leadership of the GOP, and she has been ousted from leadership. I love this video. She gets grilled here by Fox's Brett Baer. Let's roll that now, Chris.
Well, she was stripped of her leadership position, but she isn't planning to stop fighting for what she believes is right. Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney joins us live from Capitol Hill tonight. Congresswoman, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you,
Brett. I want to start by asking
asking
you about something you know a lot about, foreign policy. You just heard Trey Yingst's comments, and where you think this situation is with Israelis and the Palestinians, and how Iran plays into that.
Well, I think it is a very serious situation. I think that it's imperative that the United States continue to demonstrate our commitment to standing with Israel. I think we're seeing the same thing we've seen many, many times. Hamas, which places its rockets, places its ammunition in schools, in hospitals, in areas where civilians are going to be killed, where civilians are going to be targeted as they launch against Israel. I think clearly you've seen throughout the years Iranian involvement and engagement, and I think it's an example of how important it is for the United States to be clear and to lead the world in standing with and defending Israel. It's a pretext in terms of the reasons the rockets began to be launched into Israel. Israel has every right to defend themselves. I do think that there's a concerning development here, which is that it seems to be not only Palestinians versus Israelis, but you've got Israeli Arabs versus Jewish Israelis. And I think that conflict is one that is concerning and is a development that we had not seen to this extent previously in some of the towns across Israel.
For many years, yes. I want to talk about the situation up on Capitol Hill, your political situation. Your colleagues concluded that you couldn't be effective as the GOP conference chair because of your eagerness to challenge former President Trump on his election claims. To be honest, do you agree with them? Could you have done that job considering what you were saying and doing?
I think the question really is, what kind of a party are we going to be going forward, Brett? And I think that it's very important for us to be a party based on truth. I think it's important for us to understand the threat that the claims the former president is making. The threat is ongoing. I think we know that the kinds of language we've heard from him has caused violence in the past. And there's clearly an attempt to unravel the democracy, if you will, by focusing on challenging the legitimacy of the election, moving us away from abandoning the rule of law. And so I think that for us as Republicans, we have a huge set of issues we've got to be able to defeat the Democrats over. And we've got a huge set of policies we've got to be able to implement. We have to get people to vote for us. And we can't do that if we are a party that's based on a foundation of lies. I think what the former president's doing is dangerous.
But you and your colleagues, for at least in part, were elected to block the Biden agenda, which Republicans believe is too far left and could lead to other things. Aren't they correct to claim that your focus on the election and President Trump was somehow not going to get them to that goal?
No, I think that's actually wrong, Brett. I think if you look at where we've been since the election, since January 6th, we've had a real focus on making sure people understand that the Biden policies are dangerous. If you look at the impact for the people of Wyoming, banning oil and gas leases on public lands is really dangerous. It's really heartless. We've been very clear about that. What's happening at the border is very dangerous. So the issue isn't whether or not we stand against the Biden policies. The issue is, are we going to be a party that sits by silently while the former president continues to perpetuate lies about the election? And it is the case that there are too many people in the leadership of the Republican Party today who've been willing not only to sit by silently, but to help enable that, to help embolden those claims, and that's dangerous for the country.
So if you look at the numbers in Wyoming, 70% of Wyoming voted for President Trump. Actually, more people voted for President Trump than voted for you. A higher percentage voted for President Trump. Now you're saying you're dedicating your life to opposing him. So why, we'll put up those numbers, why should Wyoming voters say, re-elect you when you're spending so much energy opposing him, so little opposing Biden?
Well, you're wrong.
I mean, these are the numbers.
No, I'm not disputing the numbers, but I'm disputing your characterization of what I'm doing. I think it's really important for us to be as strong as possible in defeating the Biden policies. We cannot do that if we enable a lie. We cannot do that if we fail to learn the lessons from the 2020 election. And the people of Wyoming believe deeply in the Constitution. The people of Wyoming know that we must use the Constitution as our shield, that we must defend the Constitution. And so when you look at the challenge that the former president is presenting right now, still today, claiming that the election was stolen, claiming that our electoral process does not accurately reflect the will of the people, no remorse or regret for January 6th, continuing to use the language that we know inspired violence in the past. But I continue to say it, though, Brett. Brett, I continue to say it because
in principle. I get
it. It's because
but for the people of Wyoming who are electing a congressperson to fight for them and to fight against the Biden agenda, why wouldn't they say, is this the person that's going to get it done? That's what your colleagues are asking.
Yeah, I had to cut it off there because this is Brett Baer absolutely grilling Liz Cheney the entire time. I wish I could play the whole thing. It's just too long. But if you get a chance, Fringers out there, anyone who hasn't seen this, watch the whole thing. Brett really gives it to her. And what she does, what Liz Cheney does in this interview is 100% just completely proves why she does not at all belong. I don't even think she belongs not only in Senate, but in government, period, especially as a representative for the Republican Party. I don't know how somebody can say in the same breath that they are a Republican and then turn around and say that someone who's one of the greatest presidents we ever had, President Trump, tried to destroy our government. This woman is absolutely delusional, Forrest. And just listening to this again, she sounds like it. If you didn't know who Liz Cheney was and you just listened to her, you would think that it was a Democrat talking. Absolutely. And she's been identified as a rhino. For those of you fringers out there that don't know, rhino is short for Republican in name only. Basically, it's a Republican who has a Democratic left agenda. And that's what she's saying right there as she's talking. If there's any other proof you could possibly need, she gives it to you right there. She is talking, I don't know how many times she said during that interview that Trump was a liar, and she called this party the party of lies. She did nothing during that interview but completely disparage and make fun of and just completely talk bad about the Republican Party. And it should have been the Democratic Party she was talking about, because I just got done talking about that, how the left is so divisive. And that's exactly what Liz Cheney is doing here. She's being divisive. She's not going to, there's no way, Forrest, Liz Cheney's going to get on the air right there with Fox News and prove to anybody that Donald Trump was a bad person. 80,000 people plus voted for him. And she said he's perpetuating this. You know what? I don't know how Joe Biden got into office. I don't know if it was cheating. I don't know what it was. But the man that's in office right now should not be in office. I can't understand how anybody could have voted for this feeble man who I lovingly call Mr. Magoo. He just is walking around in space. This guy is the worst president we've ever had. And whether or not it was the fixed election doesn't really matter. But if you look at what we have in office, that really doesn't help her cause a whole lot. And exactly, you know, like I said, Forrest, her speaking shows me exactly why she was ousted. She wants everything. She says she wants to do everything for the party, but everything she says is against the party. You can't be Republican and be anti-Trump. Just not going to happen. Can't be your agenda. Sorry, not going to work. We need to get rid of everyone like her, Forrest, and that's what this all comes down to. And this is what's going to make the party stronger. That was a great start to get her out. There's a few more we need to work on. And it's a great, like I said, it is a great start, and they're starting to clean house. And as a little side note, I found this out, Forrest, that Liz Cheney's husband actually has ties to the CCP. You can see this article in the National Pulse, and I'll just give you a little blurb here from what it says. Representative Liz Cheney's husband's law firm represents several Chinese Communist Party-linked clients, included firms tied to the regime's military, and employs former military officials to undergird its massive Chinese practice. The National Pulse revealed this. And if you have a chance, people, go read about that, because I'm certainly going to talk about it in the next episode. Over to you, Forrest.
Yes, actually, you just explained the rhinos. Actually, remind me, in name only, actually, it's what CCP really is. In the name, they are serving the people, but actually, they are stealing people. They are enslaving people, right? The other advice to Miss Liz is, I think she can change the party for sure, because that's the beauty of this country. You have two parties. You can switch the side, or you can even create your own party. But however, in China, we only have one party, which is the CCP, who controls everything in your life, right? The CCP use their education system to brainwash you. They use their media propaganda to influence you. And at the end, they can also use their police, army force to suppress you, to disappear you. That's what happened in Hong Kong, right? So we see that happening. And people always, some people always ask me why they join the party. But because in China, a lot of young people join the party. We have a famous sentence for that: too young, too simple. They join the party, they think they are serving the people. They are going to do something good. Of course, in terms of their own opportunity, will have more opportunity. But at the end, they will find out actually the party is lying to them. They use them. They are even killing them when they have no values left to the party. For example, like Wang Jian, Wu Xiaohui, all those other high-level Chinese officials, they either died or in prison. So if you ever want to leave the party once you join the CCP, you're not only facing losing your job, but also you might losing your life. So you will be treated as a treason. So that's what happens in China. But in this country, you have that freedom to choose. David.
Yeah, it's a great point. Another great analogy there between the U.S. government and the Chinese government and the CCP. And again, yeah, Liz Cheney does have a choice, and we're glad that she does, and we hope that she goes over to the Democratic Party. I guess that is one of the beauties of it, though, is that we do have the two, for checks and balances to look after each other. That's why you can't have just one side, or you wouldn't have any right to do anything. And that's what happens with the CCP, and that's what's happening with China, as you said. They get away with murder, literally, over there. We see what they're doing with the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. I kind of was thinking about this tonight too, Forrest. I wonder what's going to happen with the Olympics next year. I wonder if people are going to boycott. I'm still thinking about that, because earlier we were talking about the CCP and how they are, trying to control everything, and how people aren't holding them accountable. Will we be able to step up to the plate and do that? Just kind of a side note that kind of popped into my head there right now when you're talking about the CCP and holding them accountable. But yeah, some great points you made there, definitely. And, in America, you have that choice. You won't get disappeared by the government, although some strange things have happened. We certainly don't want to get to that. It's a great analogy to make, and it's a great point that Americans need to realize that they have that choice and they have that freedom, because the way we're headed now is the way of the Communist Party, and siding with them is not going to help us at all. Everything that I'm talking about, Forrest is telling you, we at least have the choice, and we have the right, and we have the freedoms to do what we want to, to freedom to assemble. Forrest was with me. We've freely assembled for a long time this past month. I did it, that's for sure, protesting against the SEC. So it's things like that, Americans, you really need to think about. My fringers out there, where do you really want to go? Do you want to go that way? And I'm telling you, be careful what you wish for, because you're not going to want a communist regime. I know I don't, and that's a scary thought. Okay, so let's get into Russia now. We had a pipeline that was recently hacked, Forrest. I'm sure you heard about this. The Colonial Pipeline was hacked, and states up and down the eastern seaboard were affected by this hack. And let's look at that video now, please, Chris.
The United States naming those responsible for the Colonial Pipeline hack. Meanwhile, this morning, officials are blaming a criminal gang known as Darkside for the cyber attack which shut down the main gasoline pipeline on the East Coast. The group, believed to be based out of Eastern Europe, but does not have links to foreign governments. President Biden weighed in on the cyber attack yesterday.
So far, there is no evidence from our intelligence people that Russia is involved. Although there is evidence that the actors' ransomware is in Russia, they have some responsibility to deal with this.
Joining me right now is retired four-star General, Institute for the Study of War Chairman, and Fox News Senior Strategic Analyst, Jack Keane. General, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for being here. What do you make of that, what the president said? So we know that they are from Eastern Europe, but there is a responsibility on the part of foreign governments, I guess the government of Russia. What's your sense on who's behind this?
Yeah, well, Maria, thank you for being here. First of all, yes, Russia's involved here. About half of their offensive attack capability that they use in Russia is devoted to criminal activity. The other part is devoted to purely government activity, conducting offensive cyber attacks. But here's the little-known dark secret that's involving this. The people who are involved in the criminality, by and large, are all the Russian hackers. What Putin permits them to do is moonlight, form their own organizations, and conduct criminal activity. So to say that while this took place in Russia, and it's well known that many of the people that would be perpetuating this attack also work for the Russian government full-time and do this part-time, I believe we still hold Russia accountable for this, just as we're doing with this massive cyber attack called Solar Winds that took place a number of weeks ago. We've got to be very, very honest about what's happening here, how vulnerable we are to ourselves, and we've got a lot of work to do to fix this. But more importantly, we've got to hold people accountable and to walk this thing back and say, well, Russia's not involved because we can't tie it directly to the government. If they're conducting an attack like this using government hackers working part-time for criminal purposes, and they're going to go after the entire East Coast oil distribution network, believe me, the Russian government was aware that that has taken place, and we should hold them accountable.
Yeah. I mean, there's an op-ed in the Journal this morning, the lead op-ed from the editorial board, The Real Infrastructure Problem, saying that the country's largest fuel pipeline, Colonial Pipeline, is a glaring reminder that cyber vulnerabilities in U.S. energy and other systems are the real infrastructure problem, and that President Biden should be addressing that rather than a package that has spending in so many other areas that is not infrastructure. Your thoughts about what this incident tells us about protecting our energy infrastructure right now?
Well, we have been saying for years that the United States critical infrastructure is very vulnerable. We have the best offensive cyber capability in the world, but our defense is not what it should be. And the reason is because most of the critical infrastructure, Maria, is in the private sector. This is the utilities infrastructure we're dealing with here, but there's also finance and banking, telecommunications, air and rail transportation, all quite vulnerable. Finance and banking is probably the best protected of all of the private critical infrastructure. But we need a public-private partnership to get this done. And yes, the infrastructure bill that's being proposed should be re-examined to make certain that we're hardening our critical infrastructure and that we're putting together a public and private partnership to get this done. The government's got capability, the private sector has some capability, and it's got to increase that capability. And we have to work together to be able to achieve it. We have been talking about this for like 10 years now, and it's getting worse, and it will continue to get worse until we get on top of it.
Yeah, and here's a real impact to the American people where you're seeing some gas stations run out of gas, apparently. Yesterday saw news reports of that.
Yeah, so we do know, Forrest, from recent interactions between our President Biden and Putin that they do not like each other. Biden called Putin a murderer. Putin, challenged him to have a debate, and that never happened. And then we have this happen. So is there Russian involvement? I'll leave that as open-ended as I can. My thoughts, probably. Sounds like it. Again, they have these Russian hackers. They work full-time for the government. And then when they're not working for the government, they're hacking. That's what they do. To me, though, Forrest, this is just the beginning. It was a test. It's a definite show of our vulnerability. Our government, I don't know if you fringers out there know this or not, our government could not get involved with this because this involves the private sector. So basically the way this ended up was Colonial ended up giving $5 million to the hackers. That was it. Yeah, here's $5 million. This whole thing is weird to me, Forrest. I just get this, when you look at something from the outside and you just kind of sit back and listen to the story and gather the facts, you start to think of just what's going on here? What's really happening? And it starts to make you crazy when you start thinking about what could possibly be the reason for this. It was just too simple the way it happened. They got hacked. They said, okay, we'll pay you back. And then the hacking stopped. What happens, though, is hackers, when they hack computer systems, they actually plant viruses for later so they could, get more money out of that company later. It was kind of weird that they only asked for $5 million. That's why this whole thing is just strange. That they only ask for $5 million. They can't trace where the money's going. There's all kinds of things that I'm thinking about. Maybe I need to learn about in the future and cover this more later. But they should be concerned. This is crazy. That gas, which is our most, one of our most important economically, is one of the most important things to us. And it's not the business of the government to be involved. It's kind of unusual to me. I think from this point forward, maybe the government should certainly think about that. And maybe if we weren't concentrating so much on things like letting people decide that they're women when they're actually men, or men when they're women, and BLM and Antifa, and start focusing on what's really important, stuff like this wouldn't happen. And that's another problem that we'll talk about later. Now, something that I was thinking about, this honestly happened to me. I was thinking to myself, kind of strange how the Green New Deal, which is this colossal proposal by AOC and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that she created, we're going to have all these fossil fuels that we won't be using anymore, and everything will be electric, and we can, it's $7 trillion for this thing, and it'll cost each family $100,000 per year to fund this thing. Tax-wise, it's a nightmare. It's never going to happen. But it's just so weird that this is all happening, and I'm thinking to myself, while this is happening, I'm thinking about the Green New Deal. So I kind of just went on the internet and I typed in Google, Green New Deal, and something came up that Tucker Carlson was actually thinking the way that I was about this, that it's possibly something a little fishy going on here with this. This happening could be fuel, pun intended, for the left to push their Green New Deal proposal. So it's just something to think about. This thing is far from over, Forrest. I think it was a test, like I said. I think there's a lot more at play here. There's a lot more that will be unearthed and discovered. But as of right now, we're not going to know. Not for a little while anyway. But I'd keep an eye on the real cause of all this. Always when there's fire, where there's smoke, there's fire. Something bigger is happening. It's not just our pipeline this company got hacked for $5 million. There's something bigger coming down the pipeline. Again, pun not intended, but that one actually was. And again, they need to figure out who these hackers were, where they're from. Really, you can't find that out with all the FBI and CIA and everything else we have. Why isn't anybody talking about that, Forrest? $5 million. Okay, that was it. 5 million. It's over. No, this thing is far from over, Forrest.
Absolutely. This is definitely something fishy going on. The first, I would like to ask the question: why do you pay the 5 million? You pay once, you will pay the second time. And the second of all,
good point.
If they can hack the private company, they can hack the government. The third, the hackers is happening a long time ago, including the credit card companies. A lot of private information was leaking. We're talking about TikTok, Zoom, already leak a lot of data to CCP, right? So I feel all this is actually kind of distraction, or I should say a noise. I think at this point, we really need to focus on the virus, how to solve the virus problem, how to find out the origin of the virus, and how to hold the CCP accountable. This is the most important things, not only for this country, but also for the whole world, for India. Thank you, David.
Yeah, great point. Great point, Forrest. This is distraction and noise. And that's what a lot of anything that happens outside of what's happening with COVID is distraction and it is noise. We like to bring the news to people and let them know what's going on. And that's a great point. This could be just a distraction or noise away from COVID. Maybe they're trying to, have this distraction so people will stop thinking about COVID and it'll kind of get swept under the carpet and we move on to the next thing. But no, I think this is too serious. COVID's too serious that we can't just let it go like that. At some point, Forrest, the CCP needs to be held accountable for this tragic, tragic virus that they've released on the entire world. And that's absolutely right now just destroying the country of India. And it's like I say every single episode, it's something that we really, really need to do is hold the CCP accountable, and nobody's doing it. They talk about it. There's little bits and pieces here and there of progress being made. When are we going to hold them accountable? That's the question. Are we just going to keep talking about holding them accountable, or are we going to hold them accountable? And the way you hold them accountable is you blame them for it and you decouple. And that's what we need to do. That's what President Trump tried to do. He wasn't, he started the coupling process. Biden came into office, overturned every executive order. He could possibly sign every executive order, trying to overturn everything that Trump did to fix this country. And here we are back in this gigantic mess again. And with another distraction, what's happening at the border. So that, again, that's a great point, Forrest. And at what point does this just become distraction and noise away from what's really important? And that's what the CCP has done to the rest of the world with the COVID virus. So let's move that. Actually, it's a good segue into our last topic here. We're going to talk about COVID again. And an independent panel has found that the COVID pandemic was preventable. You don't say. Let's play that one now, Chris, please.
With a raging pandemic that's killed more than 3 million people, the report card on the response was never going to be good. But the co-chair of the independent review, former New Zealand Prime Minister Helen Clark, was scathing.
Whilst the virus was spreading, information was being hoarded and decisions were delayed. As information began to arrive at WHO, the organisation was not sufficiently empowered to investigate, validate, and then confirm at speed that a dangerous outbreak was occurring.
While China's delays and cover-ups at the outset were criticised in the report, it was far from the only country to be found wanting.
A public health emergency of international concern could have been declared by at least the 22nd of January. Even following the declaration on the 30th of January, February was a wasted month.
The review recommended a disease surveillance system in future that could publish information without needing the approval of the country where outbreaks begin. It also called for rich countries to spend more on getting vaccines to poorer parts of the world. Speaking on radio, the Prime Minister says it showed Australia was right to push for an international inquiry.
I made exactly this point when I called for this very inquiry. I made exactly this point about ensuring that the World Health Organization had the authority.
It was China with the harshest criticism, enacting trade bans on some key Australian exports, partly in response to Australia's call for an international inquiry. Now that the failures across different countries are in clear view, it's hoped this review will help prevent such a global catastrophe ever happening again. Bill Birtles, ABC News.
Yeah, they hope it'll help prevent a tragedy again. What is the WHO here for? We've talked about this in the past, and I'm glad they're starting to bring the hammer down on them. I don't know what kind of repercussions are going to come or what kind of punishment, or if there is any, that the WHO is going to face. But they've gotten bad press ever since, I would say, right after this pandemic started, Forrest. There was a lot of talk about the WHO and how really unprepared they actually are. 3 million deaths so far, and still no answers. None. No answers. Again, we know from past, when the WHO did go to China and meet with the CCP, they had wine dinners and they were talking and they were butting it up and joking and smoking, as they say in the military, and nothing came out of that. There was, they gave China, the CCP, they gave them 3 months to prepare. 3 months to prepare the WHO visit. I'll tell you what, I don't know a lot about cleaning up facilities, but I bet you the CCP had something in place where they could have easily cleaned that WIV, the Wuhan Institute of Virology lab, up in no time over there in China, Forrest. No problem cleaning that lab up before people came over there to investigate what's really going on. And that's why nothing came out of that. And then after that, we heard reports that that it was covered up. And yeah, the WHO to me is absolutely worthless. There's no reason that they didn't try to sneak in through a back door and figure out what was going on. How do you give a country 3 months warning that you're coming? I don't think that's fair to anybody at all, especially when the origin of the virus it's already been proven that it came from China, that it came from Wuhan, and that Dr. Li Mingyan said it was created by the scientists over there, by the virologists at that lab. So there should be no doubt in anyone's mind that they need to get over there as soon as possible and figure out what's going on and get a cure for this thing. And to me, Forrest, I think because it was created by the CCP, that they actually had they had the antidote probably since the first day, since this thing came out. That's what makes me the maddest about all this. that all of this was just hidden and nobody knew about it. The rest of the world is suffering, and China, the CCP, just doing their thing, bullying around the rest of the world, destroying lives, destroying economies. And that's really what they're all about. And that's why we're here to expose that. And, you know, and I'm glad we're ending the episode with this topic, because it needs to come to light again and again and again until the CCP is taken down for their atrocities to their own country of China and to the rest of the world and to mankind for the creation of this virus in that lab in Wuhan. I'm so tired of talking about it. We need to hold them accountable, and it needs to happen soon. Every day is soon, and every day is a day later, and it becomes later and later. But it's something I certainly won't soon forget, and I will certainly talk about it every single episode. Again, February is a waste of a month. What a great point that was. And why weren't they better prepared? What exactly does the WHO do? They are in cahoots. We know that, the WHO and CCP. And even, like I said, they knew that this started in China. They failed to investigate it until it was too late. And there's no accountability at all for this virus and the creation of it by the CCP in that lab in Wuhan forest.
Absolutely, David. I still couldn't believe this is more than almost 1.5 years later since last January 19th on Luder's show. Dr. Yan told the whole world this virus is lab-made virus, is highly contagious, and there will be a pandemic. Everything she said is verified. It's in front of our eye. It's happened. WHO and Dr. Fauci absolutely misled the people. If they have listened to Dr. Yan, there won't be this much death and damage to the whole world. I think if they have listened, we would be prepared, and India would be prepared for the second wave. Again, this is not nature-occurred virus. This is lab-made, unrestricted warfare. People need to wake up. We are glad to see the mainstream media start talking about this, but it's not good enough. We need to hold CCP accountable and find out the truth of this virus. Thank you, David.
Yeah, Forrest, I've talked about that before too, and I agree with you 100% on everything you said, is that, you know, again, I can't say it enough that they need to be held accountable. Nobody's holding them accountable yet. There's very small baby steps being made. And meanwhile, a virus is killing millions, has killed millions, and is just running its course all over India. When is something going to be done? What else can we do? I feel so helpless sometimes. There's so much I want to do. I'm doing my part. We need everybody else to do their part. We need our government to start focusing on those topics. This topic, not those topics. Sorry, excuse myself. This topic, the topic of COVID-19. What are we going to do about that? I understand we have policies we need to take care of within our own country. They're not doing a very good job of that either. The border's falling apart. They're talking about rebuilding the wall or putting the wall back up because they realize they made a huge mistake there. But when are not only us, but the rest of the world going to unite against China? We know for a fact that Iran, Russia, and China are forming this axis of evil. So you have a lot of problems there with those three nations. Obviously, of course, China is not going to hold themselves accountable for anything. They'll just continue to do what they do. You know, it's like a little kid who gets away with something, and he'll continue to do it until he gets caught. You know, that's how they are. They just continually push the envelope every chance they get. And when you don't do nothing about it, they kind of see what they can get away with, and they just do a little bit more. This COVID isn't the end of it either, Forrest. We've talked about this before. We've shown interviews with Gordon Chang, and he said some very interesting things that we know about what's going on in China with the CCP. There's not only this the Wuhan Institute of Virology, that lab. There's hundreds of labs just like that one. And this is not the end game. COVID-19 isn't. The CCP is working on creating a virus that will wipe out mankind. They've gotten a good start, I'd say, wouldn't you, Forrest?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've gotten a good start on that, and that's the big problem here. Is this thing is getting worse, and it's going to get worse until people realize that we need to do something immediately about the CCP, and that's why Miles Guo, came over here and put all this together for us, this whistleblower movement in New Federal State of China, to take down the CCP. And like you said, Forrest, great point. We had the warning. We had all the signs were there, and everything that we talked about in the past came to fruition. We talked about how the way this virus mutated wasn't something that natural-made viruses do. This is an extension of a COVID virus that just didn't mutate the way it would mutate if it was a virus that was made by nature. This thing is mutating in a way that a virus that was made in a lab mutates. It's been proven by some of the top scientists in the world. And the number one whistleblower, Dr. Li Mingyang, who came over here to expose all of it, and nobody listened. And all we can say every single time I'm on the show is I told you so. And we can't wait anymore, people. We need to do something about this. I wish I had the answer to how we can overcome all this, except for decoupling from China. But again, that's what needs to happen. First of all, we need to decouple and starve off the CCP. I think they're lying about how much money they have. Yes, China does have a lot of money, but again, they're keeping that secret. We're not sure about what their economy really is. There's speculation that it's not good at all. There has been rumors in the past that the actual regime is falling apart. They're around that time right now when the communist regime does meet its end. This is right around the time, 72 years, 73 years, whatever it is. I talked about this on the last episode on Tuesday. That happened in Russia. This is about the same time that Russia fell apart during their, and it's not a lot of time. People see that, how bad a communist government really is and the things that they do. And it's not something that the rest of the world should let happen. And I think one of our biggest allies is Australia. And I really look forward to any kind of news I see from Australia, because they are 100% on our side. They are not pro-Biden, which is great. They see what he's doing wrong. And like I said, you listen to Sky News and they can give you some of that great information too. So kind of going off on a tangent here, closing this thing up. But all we can do, Forrest, again, you and I, the whistleblower movement, the New Federal State of China, is just keep talking about it and getting the word out there and spreading the word. And hopefully people will start to listen. I think they are starting to listen. Unfortunately, it feels like it's a little too late. All this in India shouldn't be happening and is, and unfortunately it is. And I wish there was something. Well, we did try to do something earlier, but no one listened.
Yes, I think that's the license we have to learn. If we don't take the action, next country can be your country, like India.
Yeah, that's right. And this thing, what's going to happen next? That's another great point. Is we know that the CCP wants to take over the world. We already know that point. So what's going to happen next? The next big virus is going to break out in America. We're going to all be on lockdown again. I'll tell you what, people, it's going to happen. That's what's going to happen unless we hold, us and all of our allies, hold the CCP accountable for this virus. We can't give you any more information. We've given you everything we've given you. We've given you all the proof that it was created in a lab in Wuhan by the CCP. Now it's checkmate time. They're gonna use that to destroy the entire planet, except for themselves, and and that's how it is. They want to take over the world by any means necessary, and that's their way of doing it. Until we hold them accountable, we need to decouple. We need to take care of this problem now, before it's too late. We tried to warn you a year ago. Here we are a year later. Look what's happening in India. I might not be here a year from now to tell you, we told you so, because it might already be over by then. So it needs to happen now. I'd like to thank Forrest for, we're over our time here, but that happens. I want to thank, first of all, I'd like to thank our team for hanging out with us extra late tonight. We really appreciate that. We appreciate our translators, our production crew, Chris, our OBS producer, everybody behind the scenes that helps us out, Joanna for creating our mashup every week, for staying with us as I continue to spread the word and try to just get out there. You know, maybe one person will hear it and spread it and tell someone else. That's all you need is one person, really, just to listen to what you're saying. And I want to thank you, Faris. Thank you so much for stepping in tonight and joining us, taking over for Ada. You did a fantastic job, and I'd love to have you back again, and I look forward to it.
Thanks.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Again, this is The Fringe. We are on every Tuesday and Friday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. right here on gtv.org MOS Talk. Thank you all again very much for joining us this evening, for your patronage. Until the next time, have a great weekend. God bless you. God bless your families. Have a great night and a great weekend.
Have a nice weekend.
他们的恐惧是我们的武器，我们的胜利。谢谢了，兄弟姐妹们，你们健身了吗？行动，行动，行动！中共，你完了 ！Take down the CCP！
Beginning for the games you want to play. Bring it on and I will fight to the end. Just watch and see. It's all started, everything's begun, and you are over. Cause we're taking down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. Let's take down the CCP. Let the bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
中共，
Let the bullets fly a little
你
longer.
完了！
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
中共，你完了！干灭中国共产党这个 CCP， 还能让我们远离恐惧。Take down CCP。
They try to scare the nation with fabrication, but we see through the lies. We won't fall, we will fight you back. Police corruption with crooked assumption. They ran our lives, but no more. We will win. We will take down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. Let's take down the CCP. Let the bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
站起来吧！
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
站起来吧！
Let the bullets fly a little
为
longer.
奴役的人们
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
行动！
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
行动！
Let the bullets fly a little
你
longer.
完了
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
！Take down CCP。
Bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. 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 Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down the evil CCP.